So, the most common question that I receive is, what is public service? It's self-evident if you're an Anglo-Saxon. It's self-evident if you're a contemporary Hellene. The problem is there isn't a phrase or a word or a direct translation. So we often have to spend a little bit of time explaining what it is we mean, and then people say, oh yeah, that's what you do. Well, I'm really interested. I'd like to do that also. But let me just say, here's how Michael Dukakis defines it. Making a contribution. Being of service to others in your community. Doing something for the well-being of someone else without personal gain. That's our base definition of public service. That's what we try to instill in the minds of the young people who come here. They're looking to add something to their education that they can't get somewhere else. It's a very common idea. We'd like to imagine that you're going to become a better citizen as a result of your receiving an education at a school like ACT, and this is how we do it. Now, we often think that we distinguish between the public persona and the private persona. Let's say in your home you do things that you wouldn't necessarily do in public. This is a very old distinction. It's an idea actually that you find in the famous funeral oration by Pericles as recounted by the Greek historian Thucydides. We exercise freedom in our private dealings. When we act on the behalf of our fellow citizens, we act with reverence and respect. That's something else that we try to have come across to the young people who take part in our events, who attend our classes, who attend our seminars, to say there is something of you that belongs to the public sphere. And your behavior in that particular environment has to be a little different from the behavior that you would enact when you're at home or with your close friends or family. There's something about your being a public servant, regardless of whether you work for the public service or just acting as a private individual. It's a very important idea. They say we're all, to some extent, public personages. And this is why the model of Michael Dukakis is so compelling, because you can look and see what he does. As a private individual, he certainly has his things. He does his things with his family, for example. That's not my business how he spends his weekend, but it is important for me to say how he behaves when he's in the public eye and how he relates to other people when he's in the public space. This is what we try to get across in our messaging about public service. Now, there's a final thought that I want to add here. We live at a time where in various places around the world, the notion, the ideal of public service is under siege. We're not here to make public commentary on political figures. That's not what we do at the Dukakis Center. We would like to imagine that democracy, our political systems, are better if we're encouraging young people in particular to contribute and to participate. What we seek to do today is to overcome some of the malaise that young people express readily about there not being any hope, there not being anything to look forward to, there not being any reason to participate, their dissatisfaction, their disaffection with the political system. We're trying to tell them that, yes, this is a normal thing. I may have experienced it as a young person also, but there are ways you can get around this. And the role model that is Michael Dukakis is one such way. Look at what he did. Look at how he coped with his various successes and failures and kept his steady compass. He knew where he wanted to go. He knew what his values were. He knew what was important in life as a public figure. That's what we try to get across to young people today, and that's what the meaning of public service is. Brings me to one final point. I'm often asked, what are the sorts of things that you've done at the ACT, at the Dukakis Center, that you're most proud of? Well, I tell the story of one event in particular that we organized back in 2014. It was a time when there were local and European elections throughout Greece. And we were working with a renowned photographer, herself an alumna of Anatolia High School. This would be Krista Nicolari. And we came up with the idea that we train some young people in how to take a certain kind of photograph. We do a master class in portraiture, in photography, and then we'd have the students shadow a public figure who was running for public office. One of the candidates was running for the municipal council of Thessaloniki, for example, the municipal council of Thessaloniki, and who was organizing campaign events, who was speaking in the public, who was meeting voters, who was trying to sell the position that they stood for. We'd take the photos that we took from those events and we'd organize a public exhibition. We invited the candidates, we invited other photographers, we invited journalists to come and say, look, this is what we discovered as we followed these people in their campaigns. This is another side of who they are and what they represent. This is why you might be interested in voting for this person as opposed to someone else. We call the exhibition, Would You Vote For Me? The idea being, not so much that we're trying to campaign on behalf of someone, but we're showing people things they might not otherwise see when they're considering how they want to cast their vote. One of the students wrote something quite beautifully, and it really captured what we were trying to do with this particular exercise. I asked each of the students to say, each of the participants, the photographers, to say, in what way is what you've accomplished here as a professional photographer a public service? That is to say, what I asked them to do was to tell me what public service is as a result of their experience. Not have me tell them that this is public service and then come and say, oh yes, this is what we did, but to define it in their own terms. What we call at ACT learning in action. And that's precisely what they did. So this young lady wrote some rather remarkable text. A gal named Simona Ramos from Skopje, a really fascinating young person who's going on to do a master's degree and be involved in public service initiatives throughout her career as a college student. Well, here it is. She says, this is what we're doing. We're helping people come together. We're helping see what their common future might be. We're not telling them what to do. We're offering something that they might not have had access to previously. I think this is what Michael Dukakis would have us do here at ACT, at the Dukakis Center. This is what we've been trying to do for the last 5 or 6 years, in particular with the transformation of the center into an outreach hub. And I'd like to imagine that this is what the future holds for us at the Dukakis Center.